So the recordings will be out on our website if anybody ever wants to go look at them or refer back to them, or if you're not able to make a meeting. And typically when you join these meetings, you'll be muted to start, and that's fine if you want to stay muted so that we don't have any background noise, but just be aware of that when it's your turn to speak, that you'll need to unmute. So I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for being a part of this committee. It's very important to the department that we are here to serve you all as licensees, and we want to make sure that we are doing so in the most effective, efficient way possible, and making it as what can be a very daunting process be as smooth as possible. Obviously, there's some legislative requirements, and with good reason. It's a highly regulated product, and we want to make sure we're doing our part to make sure only the right people are getting into the business, and we do what we need to do on that end. But with that being said, we also don't need it to be overly burdensome or confusing for licensees or applicants. So we wanted to put this group together and we want open, honest feedback from you all. So don't feel like you're hurting our feelings if you say, the way we do something is completely upside down. If it's something we can change, we want that feedback so we can take that into consideration and make whatever changes we can. And obviously we don't have necessarily an end goal in mind. We're not looking for a piece of legislation. We're not looking for a new form. We're just looking for your feedback so that can guide our path, so that if it does mean we should seek legislation, that we know that, hearing that from you. But that's not necessarily our expected outcome going into it. But if that is the suggestion you all have at the end of it, that's something we will consider. We are going to hold these meetings quarterly. I wanted to have this first one just a really brief meeting, just to kind of do introductions and get all the housekeeping items off the agenda so that we can really get down to the meat of things when we meet next time. But I also want to give you guys some time to review the materials. What we're going to ask you to do is there's a website, and actually I will share my screen with you real quick. Actually, let me back up for a second. We're going to start with introductions. I apologize. So I think you all know me. I'm Becky Shaw. I'm the administrator of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Division. I have in my office, just kind of observing today, one of our department attorneys, Nick Gochis. And then we'll go down my list of attendees here. So Jason, if you'd like to introduce yourself next, please.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jason Johnson. I'm the administrator with the Gambling Control Division, and we do a lot of work with Becky and her folks through regulation and background checks and different things. So we're excited to hear some feedback as well.
Thank you, Jason. I know Shad was going to be a little bit late, so we'll come back to him when he hops on. Ms. Damaris. And you're still muted, Jess.
Thank you, Becky. Hey, everybody. I am Jess DeMorris. I'm an attorney in Missoula, previously with DOR, have been out in private practice for a few years. I represent about 150 or so liquor licensees in the state of Montana, everyone from manufacturers, distributors, resort licensees, etc. And was excited that Becky invited me to be part of this process. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jess. Mr. Hodges.
I'm Alan Hodges. I started Undammed Distilling Company here in Billings a little years ago. So I've gone through the licensing process on my own. Of course, renewals. I just brought investors on board, and so have gone through that whole change of ownership licensing process, and am in the process of relocating. So am in the throes of going through that whole licensing process as well. I'm a member of the Montana Distillers Guild. And so I know there's a handful of folks in the guild who've, had some different experiences. And so I'm asking for their input as well to bring to this committee.
Excellent, thank you. Representative Buttrey.
Yes, hello, I'm Ed Buttrey. I've got a couple roles maybe that might be helpful. I'm a representative out of Great Falls, House District 21. I've sponsored and worked on a lot of the alcohol licensing legislation over the years. I also chair the Business and Labor Committee, which is where most of the legislation comes through. In addition to that, I own multiple all beverage licenses and gambling endorsements. And so I'm also working within the industry and glad to help and be part of this process.
Thank you, Representative Buttrey, and we appreciate your work both on the legislative side as well as a licensee. So welcome to the committee. Hannah, who is our wholesale license representative, is not able to join us today, and Laura.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura. I'm with Gary and Leo's Fresh Foods. We have 3 retail grocery stores in the state of Montana. And through the years, we have had employees become shareholders, and we've also had employees retire and move out of our business. So we have been fairly regular in moving people through minor ownership as well as major ownership changes in the last few years, as well as keeping our licenses and our managers in compliance as location managers.
All right, thank you, Laura. And again, thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this committee. Like I said, we want open, honest feedback, and we want this to be a very informal setting. We're not gonna, Madam Chairman and all that kind of stuff. It's just, if you've got something to contribute, please speak up, or, we may have to raise our hands depending on how many people want to speak up all at the same time, but we'll get that figured out as we start moving forward. These are public meetings, and I will share the website now that I had mentioned a minute ago. As soon as I find it, there we go. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So it's the regular DOR website, and then you go to alcoholic beverages, and there's the Alcohol Licensing Advisory Committee link over here on the right-hand side. And you click that, and it's got kind of the little overview of why we put this together. There's a spot for upcoming meetings. So it's got today's meeting and the agenda for today's meeting, which is nothing that you need to worry about ahead of time on this particular one, but going forward, that will give you an idea of what we want to talk about at that next meeting. And then there's a link to join the Zoom meeting or Teams, depending on how we do these going forward. And we will be holding them in person going forward. This one, since it was so short and just an introduction, I didn't feel the need for people to have to travel to this one. But going forward, we would like people to be in person as much as possible, just so we can have that open conversation. And if it works and we want to change the location up across the state, we can find places that work, we're happy to do that too. They don't always have to be in Helena. Under the working group members, there's the list of people that just introduce themselves. And we do still have some open spots. If you know anybody who is a winery licensee or a small off-prem versus a chain off-prem, or a small on-premise licensee without gambling that does their own applications. And again, that was a key part for us. We don't want people who hire an outside attorney to do it, and then they're hearing second or third hand information. We want to hear directly from those of you that are doing your own applications. And that's why Ms. Damaris is on this, because she does applications for a multitude of licensees. So to gain their perspective, the private attorney perspective was important to us as well. But if you know anybody that fits those, reach out to me or have them reach out to me. We'd like to get all the voices heard so that we can make sure we meet everybody's needs. And then down here on the bottom is a resources section. So there's meeting resources, and going forward, we'll have the previous meetings, agendas, and recordings. That's why we're recording the meeting, so that if you miss a meeting, you can go refer to that. And then there's a tab down here for each different license type. And under that, you'll see all the forms that, maybe not all the forms, but you'll see a multitude of applications that as a licensee of that type, you may utilize. So that's what we're wanting your feedback on for this next meeting that we're going to schedule. Is we want you to look at those forms, go through them, see what makes sense. Do all the words on there make sense to you? Or could we use a different term when we ask for, premises address? Could we explain that better? In anything that's on the form that doesn't make sense, or you question why is that needed? And a lot of it might be legislative, but that's fine. We can certainly have the discussion and talk about, here's where it's at in law. That's why we ask for that particular item. And as far as look at the form itself, look at how you submit those forms, and where you find them even. And any feedback that you have on those is what we're wanting to talk about for that next meeting that we're going to have. So I think at this point, I'm going to pause for a minute and see if anybody has questions, or if everybody was able to locate that website first, or if they have any questions. I can certainly send a link out to everybody as well, if that would be helpful. Anybody have any questions or feedback at this point?
Please send
I
the
think
link.
sending the link would be helpful.
Okay, I will do that. And then knowing kind of what we're looking for that next meeting, how much time would you all like to review this information before we hold our next meeting?
Are you wanting us to go through every type or just the type that we're familiar with?
The type that you're familiar with. And that's why we have somebody from each segment here, so that you don't have to review everybody's forms, just the ones that you might deal with in your world.
Great.
I would say probably a month. We're at tax year end right now. And if I'm assuming if other people are doing their own liquor licensing as we are, they're probably also very involved in their own tax and financial year ends.
Okay. So would maybe the end of February work for everybody? And would everybody be able to come to Helena for that next meeting?
I will be in Colorado for a distilling convention the end of February, so early March would be better for
Okay.
me.
Would the second week in March, is everybody available? Anybody not available the second week of March? Okay. Well, I will get something scheduled for the second week of March.
The 14th and 15th, I'll be available. I'm in a convention the earliest part of the week too.
Okay. Okay.
Probably the 15th would be better for me.
Okay. Or would the 7th of March work for everybody as well?
Thursdays are tough for me. I still staff our tasting room on Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Gotcha.
So Friday the 8th would be better, would work.
Okay. Okay. And maybe what I'll do is send what's the calendar poll thing called? A calendar poll out to everybody, and you can select dates and times that would work best. And then we'll get that confirmed and get that sent out so that everybody put it on your calendars, and then you'll know how long you have to review that material so that you can be prepared for that next meeting. One thing I should mention that, as Jason mentioned, he is with the Gambling Control Division, and they do a lot of work for us. They investigate backgrounds of individuals applying for licenses, and they audit some financials, and they do premises inspections, things like that for us. So that's why they're part of this process. And even though some of our licensees may have gambling licenses, the goal of this particular committee is not to change the process for gambling necessarily. Now, if Jason finds feedback from these meetings helpful and it's something he wants to institute on his end, he's certainly welcome to do so, but that's not ultimately a goal of this committee. So just keep that in mind if you deal with gambling as well, that it may not necessarily change in the gambling world if it does in the alcohol world. And Jason, if there's anything you'd like to add to that,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'll definitely be really tuning into any suggestions as far as gambling controls go. We're always looking to be more efficient and more business friendly. So I'll be happy to have those conversations as well.
Thanks, Jason. All right, like I said, this first meeting was just going to be super short and sweet to kind of go over things, get you familiar with what we're looking for and why we put this together, and just introduce the committee members. So I'll give just a few minutes if anybody has anything they'd like to add or ask at this point.
Ms. Schlau, this is Ed Buttrey. Do you see the executive coming out with a whole bunch of red tape type legislation for the next session that we'd be able to get a heads up on, or are you seeing any of that type of activity again?
Great question, Representative Buttrey. I know that the governor's office has asked agencies to look for additional red tape relief. As you are very familiar, alcohol the Alcoholic Beverage Control Division went through and tried to do all of their red tape relief last session. So I do not anticipating a bunch of bills from ABCD for legislation this session. Now there may be other department bills tax-wise or things like that, or other agencies, but as far as alcohol-related red tape, I don't anticipate much. We do have some cleanup from last session because there was so many bills and so many industry bills on top of the department bills. So there's some cleanup, but our division is not planning to bring a whole bunch of red tape bills this session, no.
Okay, and I just asked that because revenue didn't really have the problem, but a lot of agencies either didn't have the time or desire or whatever to get the business impact from the bills that were coming forward. And it would seem that, the earlier that industry knows what the executive's thinking, the better input we can give back to you on how that's going to affect licensees. So appreciate
Absolutely.
any heads up we can get.
Yep, and as you know, we're part of the Alcohol Coalition group as well, and we take all of our draft legislation to them so that each one of the lobbyists have time to review and share with their members as well. And that is something that I will mention here. You'll notice there's not lobbyists that are part of this committee. And again, that's by design because we're wanting the people that actually do the applications themselves, the people that know and live that world every day to be part of this, to provide the feedback we're looking for. So not that we don't value lobbyists' opinions on other things as well, but as far as completing applications, we want the people actually doing it themselves. All right. Anybody else have any other questions or feedback? All right. Well,
there we go. Becky, I have one quick question for you.
Yes.
Hopefully this is just a housekeeping type matter. If someone is in TAP and they're working on inputting a license application of any sort, whether it's a Form 5 or a corporate structure change, if we notice issues inside of TAP, like for instance, one thing that has come up for me, this is just an example, when license numbers changed, as you know, the resort license numbers changed and now include letters. And unfortunately with TAP and a lot of the forms that you can download, they don't like that. You can't, letters are not recognized when you go try and plug them in on forms. If we notice sort of just IT type issues with that, what's the most efficient way for us to bring that to the attention of someone at the department? Just those type of glitchy things.
Yep, that's a great example. I think in those particular cases, just work with the licensing specialist for that area and give them a heads up that you're seeing that, and then they'll talk amongst themselves and get that fixed here on our end. But that,
Okay.
yeah, that's great to know that it.
Yeah, well, and something to put out to folks on here who are doing it themselves. One thing that I have found helpful in the past, if you can figure out on your computer how to take a screenshot of your screen, that helps your licensing specialist a lot when you're trying to show them what's going on when you're in those applications. But I just wasn't sure if, should we be going to an IT type person, or is it okay to just go to our licensing specialist?
I think the licensing specialist is a great place to go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments from the committee members? All right, seeing none, I will open it up for public comment, although I'm not sure we have any other participants other than the committee today, but any public comment? All right, seeing none, I will send out a link to the committee for the website with the agendas and all of the information for this committee. And I will send a doodle poll for the date and time for our next meeting. And then once everybody's responded to that and we've got a time that works, I will schedule the next meeting. So thank you, everybody, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.